In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, 3 brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan, Frye, Chad Robinson, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Hello, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. Today, I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today from Spokane, Washington, Bryan Frye. How you doing, Bryan?
Good evening, everybody. Doing well.
That's great. How is the sunny land of Spokane? Is it sunny? I don't know. It's sunny and Spokane sound good together. Is it cloudy? I don't know.
It was a beautiful day today that started at 16 degrees and plateaued at a ripe 38.
Yeah. No thanks. That's awful.
It's all right, man. The colder it gets, the more snow comes later.
Ugh. And joining us today is one of our most popular guests on the show. We have DJ Bryant joining us again.
Hello, Dolly.
First time to the Three Timers Club.
I love it. I always love a good third time.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
So if you didn't catch DJ before, small plug, catch the Death Becomes Her episode and the Blue Velvet episode. Both of them are highly downloaded episodes, so this should be no different. But I still don't think people know DJ well enough, so we're going to hit you with a few more questions.
Sounds good.
Rocky Horror Picture Show has some great costumes in it, and you have done some pretty cool costumes yourself. What is your biggest Halloween costume?
So, for those of you who don't know, I am an amateur drag queen, and I'm pretty stoked about my look this year. I'm going to be Little Red Riding Ho.
Perfect. And I assume you've got the cape and...
Oh, totally. I got the cape. I just need a wolf.
Did you get a basket too?
I got a basket full of condoms and dildos.
This is great. You should probably post a picture of that.
Oh, definitely I will.
That's fantastic.
And so, Frye, what about you? You've done some pretty good costume work yourself. You and Jessica do some couples costumes. What about you?
I would say that our best costuming was probably in the form of the elusive duo of Where's Waldo and Carmen Sandiego. I was particularly proud of that one. But if I really have to give a nod to one, we were planning on staying in one Halloween and not going out. And then a friend of ours who lived in our neighborhood apartment area called us and said, "Hey, we're having an impromptu Halloween party. Get your butts over here." And we're like, crap. Okay, we're unprepared. Somehow we threw together, and I completely nod to the fact that this was last minute, but I was very impressed with us. Jess ended up crafting a dress out of a garbage bag, and she already had a blonde wig and some face paint to go as Lady Gaga. Yes. And I found a ratty, old, perfectly colored blue towel that I cut a hole in and went as Towley.
Yes.
Maybe if I get a little bit high.
Everybody thought that was something we had already prepped, and they were like, "Oh, you already had costumes," and we just kind of did that like shaky, nervous laugh, like, "Yeah, it was, thanks."
So it's Halloween time, and it's time for scary movies. What movie scared you the most, DJ?
If I had to choose one, I would say It Follows.
Ooh.
Mainly because the night I went to go see it at the movie theater, going home, I was coming down a creepy Pittsburgh road, and there was a gentleman walking in the middle of the road, and it scared the bejesus out of me, because I thought it was It Follows. I also really like the soundtrack in that movie, too.
Not coincidentally, he also tied you to a chair.
Yes.
I'm curious, though, having spent a fair amount of time in Pittsburgh, what road isn't creepy?
Well, there's tons of them.
So the ones that are like in like the valleys are a little bit more creepy, like where you're like 3 levels below the main like high street level and you're going under bridges. And you know,
Okay.
if you veer off like
Well, listen, I've been on Carson at 3 a.m. So The Walking Dead is alive in Pittsburgh.
Well, DJ's right. Under bridges are creepy, and Pittsburgh has more bridges than any city in the world, so there's a lot of creepy that go around. So pick your bridge.
Yep.
There might be a troll there. So Halloween, scary times. Brian, what about you?
I think the movie at the time that scared me the most was probably 28 Days Later, because I had grown up watching old school zombie films, and zombies were supposed to be slow. And when 28 Days Later came out, I was like, what is with these ultra fast rabid zombies thing? I'm not okay with this. So the premise of the fast mover zombie troubled me greatly.
For me, it's The Exorcist. It scared me, flat out.
I laugh when I watch it.
Ugh, it's
a comedy to me.
I don't know. It gets me. I don't know. Little girl in danger and possession, or like I don't know. There's probably another thing to make it a straight tic-tac-toe for me, but it definitely checks a lot of the boxes. Also, slow build up, so that tension, a lot of tension. So yeah. Checks all the boxes for me on that one. And today we're doing a musical. What movie has the best music in it? Can be a score, can be soundtrack. What about you, DJ?
Well, like I already said, I like the soundtrack for It Follows. The best score is Back to the Future.
The Power of Love. Oh, man.
That wasn't the score. That was a song in it.
Oh, the score. So you're going with score.
The score.
Okay, so you're deducting the soundtrack.
Yes. I do like Hugh Lewis in the news. Like, don't get me wrong.
Okay, so that's where my head went. I was just like, oh, no. Okay, Back to the Future. That's fair on the score then. Brian, what about you, man?
Well, I'm going to go with score also, and it would be between Blade Runner and Tron.
Ooh, good choice.
I dearly love both of those movies, and so their soundtracks are just very iconic to me. If I'm hard pressed to name you a soundtrack. I remember at the time I was really into the 10 Things I Hate About You soundtrack, but I'm a little hard pressed to just pull an actual. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy was a phenomenal soundtrack. So there have been a lot. I'm not sure if I just can pin the tail on one specific one.
And as for me, I am a huge fan of the Ramones. You might be able to tell by the theme song. It's influenced by that straight up good old punk rock music. So I love Rock and Roll High School. It's probably not going to win awards for being a great constructed, written movie, but I love it, and it's because of the Ramones. Today's movie, though, what movie are we going to do today, DJ? We're
going to do the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That's right. This movie comes out in 1975. It grosses $112.89 million. It accrues this, however, over a long, long run, and it holds the longest theatrical run in history under its belt. So it actually doesn't do well at first, but it grows and grows to be this true cult classic, I think, when you talk about a cult classic. Placing in the box office that year, so again, this is stretched out over a long time, it's number 2 behind Jaws and number 3 over One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So again, these are not initial returns. These are stretched out. Number 1 movie that year, as mentioned, was Jaws. IMDb gives the Rocky Horror Picture Show a 7.4. The critics like it a good bit more, though. The critics give it an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the audience gives it an even higher review of 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. When the film first opens, it had traditional screenings, and it bombed. And Meatloaf, who plays Eddie in the movie, attended an opening week performance with director Jim Sharman in the Midwest, and the theater was completely empty. In the mid-70s, midnight screenings became popular, and it was like a word-of-mouth thing where the audiences might enjoy this film, and so it started to grow and went from city to city to city and became so popular that it is shown continually in theaters since 1975, making it the longest theatrical run in history. DJ, this is quite an unusual cinematic phenomenon. Had you seen this one before? What was your takeaway on it?
Yes, I had seen this probably back in high school or so. I was hanging around the drama kids, the thespians, if you will. And I had never seen it prior to that, and they dragged me to one of these screenings where they do the live reenactment. And I was just awestruck at the time.
So you saw the play first?
No, not the play, the actual movie, but with the actors acting alongside it.
Yeah.
And I was just awestruck. I looked to my friend and I was like, what did I just watch? And she's like, it's theater of the absurd. It doesn't mean anything. Just enjoy it. Okay, I do. So yes.
And what was it like coming back to it now? Like, has it held up for you over your multiple rewatches?
It has, and like it seems like every time I watch it now, I get more and more from it. Like I find more things in the plot or in like hidden in the background of the story that kind of helps it make a little more sense. Like it doesn't completely make that much sense to me at this point, but it's getting there. Maybe by the time I'm 80, I'll completely understand it.
What about you, Bryan? Had you seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show before?
First time I had ever seen it, it was something that I had a couple near misses with. There used to be, or there probably still is, a old garage turned bar venue in Durham. I ended up seeing The Big Lebowski, the musical there, and we missed seeing Rocky Horror there one time. And then I've just had a couple other near misses with the movie. Yeah, it was one of those things where I jumped on the opportunity because I was like, all right, I got to see this movie. You know, as a movie fan, it's an omission to have not seen this yet. And I'll be honest, the first time I watched it, I was like, what the F did I just watch? Jess was laughing at me because of my facial expressions, just because I was like, all right, well, that's a thing. But I kind of sat on it for a while, let it digest, and then rewatched. And I can't imagine even at 80 I would get all the nuances to this movie. Yeah, I don't know. It was a thing.
For me, I watched this one probably, I was about 10th grade, so I was in high school. I believe VH1 had picked it up around this time. And I remember watching it. It was late. And I remember thinking, like, what is this on TV? Like, this is a lot for TV. And I'm just sitting there going, like, man, I feel like I'm getting away with watching something here. And, like, it was really off the wall. And so it was definitely one of those moments where it was surreal for me. Because, again, it's a movie made to push buttons, for sure. So it was an experience. I really don't have too many other ones like that, where you watch it alone being like, I know I'm probably shouldn't be watching this right now. But I watched it anyway, and I had a good time with it. And I've seen it on TV, actually, probably. I think VH1 comes back to it periodically. And I pick it up here and there again. But to actually sit down and watch the whole thing, this is only my second time doing that. And so it's been quite a while since I've watched it all. And so I'm like DJ, where I thought maybe I had just never really sat down and paid full attention to really get it all. And after watching it, I was left with questions. But I had a good time. I had a good time with it every time. And I was probably watching it less for shock and just having a fun time this time. And so in the end, it's not as shocking as I remembered. Maybe I'm desensitized now. I didn't like totally blow my mind for the shock value, but it seemed shocking the first time. But I think it had more to do with it was on cable TV. So yeah. It's a fun movie to come back to, and it clearly has a big following. We're going to break this movie down further, but there was a warning here. There are spoilers that lie ahead, so if you don't want to know what happens in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, tune out, watch the movie, come back, and enjoy the rest of this episode. We'll be back after these messages.
President Donald J. Trump here from the White House. You know, America, I get so tired of listening to all the fake news out there. They're always treating me very unfairly. It's shameful, really. It's a shame I get so tired of all the news that I've taken to listening to podcasts. There are a lot of fake podcasts out there, too, pretty much any of them from CNN. But one that all of America seems to be able to agree on, including myself, is the Retro Movie Roundtable podcast. Stop worrying about the investigations, what's going on in Russia. Go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, and give them a shiny gold 5-star review. Comment below, let them know how to make the show even greater. Like them on Facebook. Reach out to them at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Maybe someday they will be lucky enough to review my tremendous acting performances and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. I was a terrific star of that movie, and the Academy Awards rigged the Oscars that year to exclude me. It's too bad, really. It's very bad. But you know what isn't bad? The Retro Movie Roundtable podcast. Thank you, America, and you're welcome.
All right. And we're back. Welcome back. There will be spoilers that lie ahead for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, so this is your final warning. DJ, for those who haven't seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show since 1975, refresh people's memories.
Sure
what happens?
Okay. Let's get into it. So the movie begins with lip-singing science fiction double feature, and the audience is introduced to a narrator, later to be explained as a criminologist, who tells us, the viewers, a tale about a newly engaged couple, Brad Majors and Janet Weiss, who find themselves lost and stranded with a flat tire on a cold and rainy night on August the 8th, 1974. Seeking a telephone, the couple walk to a nearby castle where they discover a group of strange and outlandish people who are holding an annual Transylvanian convention. They are soon swept into the world of Dr. Frankenfurter, a self-proclaimed sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. The ensemble of convention attendees also includes Frankenfurter's servants, Riffraff, and his sister Magenta, and a groupie named Columbia. In his lab, Frank claims to have discovered the secret to life itself. His creation, Rocky, is brought to life. The ensuing celebration is soon interrupted by Eddie, an ex-delivery boy who both Frank and Columbia have a personal history with, as well as a partial brain donor to Rocky, who rides out of a deep freeze on a motorcycle. Eddie then proceeds to seduce Columbia while getting the Transylvanians dancing and singing and intrigue Brad and Janet. When Rocky starts dancing and enjoying the performance, a jealous Frank kills Eddie with an axe. Columbia screams in horror, devastated by Eddie's death. Frank justifies killing Eddie as a mercy killing to Rocky, and they depart to the bridal suite. Brad and Janet are shown to separate bedrooms where each is visited and seduced by Frank, who poses as Brad when visiting Janet, and then Janet when visiting Brad. Janet, upset and emotional, wanders off to look for Brad, who she discovers via a television monitor is in bed with Frank. She then discovers Rocky cowering in his birth tank, hiding from Riffraff, who has been tormenting him. While tending to his wounds, Janet becomes intimate with Rocky, as Magenta and Columbia watch from their bedroom monitor. After discovering his creation as missing, Frank returns to the lab with Brad and Riffraff, where Frank learns that an intruder has entered the building. Brad and Janet's old high school science teacher, Dr. Everett Scott, has come looking for his nephew Eddie. Frank suspects that Dr. Scott investigates UFOs for the government. Upon learning of Brad and Janet's connection to Dr. Scott, Frank suspects them of working for him. Brad denies any knowledge of it, and Dr. Scott assures Frank that Brad is totally not involved in UFOs. Frank, Dr. Scott, Brad, and Riffraff then discover Janet and Rocky together under the sheets in Rocky's birth tank, upsetting Frank and Brad. Magenta returns to the reunion by sounding a massive gong, stating that dinner is prepared. Rocky and the guests share an uncomfortable dinner, which they soon realize has been prepared from Eddie's mutilated remains. Janet returns screaming to Rocky's arms, provoking Frank to chase her through the halls. Janet, Brad, Dr. Scott, Rocky, and Columbia all meet in Frank's lab, where Frank captures them with the Medusa transducer, transforming them into nude statues. After dressing them in cabaret costume, Frank unfreezes them and they perform a live cabaret floor show, complete with an RKO tower, a swimming pool, and Frank as their leader. Riffraff and Magenta interrupt the performance, revealing themselves and Frank to be aliens from the planet Transsexual in the galaxy of Transylvania. They stage a coup and announce a plan to return to their home planet. In the process, they kill Columbia and Frank, who has failed his mission. An enraged Rocky gathers Frank in his arms, climbs to the top of the tower, and plunges to his death in the pool below. Riffraff and Magenta release Brad and Janet and Dr. Scott before the castle lifts off from Earth. The survivors are then left crawling in the dirt, and the narrator concludes that the human race is equivalent to insects crawling on the planet's surface, lost in time and lost in space and in meaning. The end.
Well, that made sense. I know that. So, Bryan, what do you think about this completely coherent plot?
It was easier to follow with him reading it. I feel embarrassed to have been confused the first time with the succinctness of that.
Well, I just can't make total heads of tails. I find myself thinking this has to mean something, but you know, like whether it be somebody getting turned into statues, or whether it's a clothing thing, or whether it's the midnight visits from Dr. Frankenfurter, or whether it's, you know, there's a lot of points in here I feel like they're trying to say something, but then again, I'm wondering, I took an art class in college to take a side tangent here, and I, as an architect, everything has to have a reason. I'm very rational about, like, the program informs the art of the building and the aesthetic of it. And so one of the things that I had a hard time with, and he's told me, like, you need to just, they're trying a different way of exploring space. They're trying to think of a different way of putting medium on the canvas, and they're just trying out stuff. And like I was like, yeah, but what does the abstract stuff mean? Like, what does it mean to them? He's like, you just need to back off, man. Like, he's like, you're thinking way too much. And I have a feeling Rocky Horror Picture Show could just be my art teacher telling me, you're thinking too much, man.
Too much.
Yeah.
Back off.
What about you, Jay?
Well, I think one of the issues here, and I think one thing that's difficult for a lot of people in understanding this is obviously there's a lot of moving parts and pieces going on here. So it's not like you can watch this once and immediately get it. The other issue that complicates it is that a lot of the plot is communicated to us via the songs. And so unless you're really paying attention to the songs, which I think a lot of us kind of get hypnotized by the dance or the beats or what's happening in the scene, you miss a lot of information. Mm-hmm. And it really, so for me, like, it really took, like, looking up the lyrics to the songs and reading through it. It's like, oh, okay, I get this now. I still don't understand this. Like, why are the aliens there? Why are they, what's significant about, like, life, like, creating new life? Like, I don't get that, but.
No, it's a good point. This is a movie that, again, opened at an empty theater, and people didn't really watch it. It looked doomed. It was ignored by the critics, and perhaps it was even the black and white poster with Dr. Frankenfurter in garters and heels and no shirt. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's not appealing. It's not rendered in a nice way. If you've ever seen the original poster, by chance, have you? Yeah. And the second film poster was really provocative. It has these iconic red lips that are painted with everything else black, and it has a tagline of a different set of Jaws. And as we saw, that Jaws was the #1 movie in '75. And perhaps this spoofing poster played a big part of it. Fun fact, the lips on the poster are not that of the ones in the movie. It's the lips of Playboy model Laura Lee Shark.
Oh, really?
So another Jaws connection. So okay. Jaws to Laura Lee Shark. What is it that made this grow into what it became, DJ? In your opinion? Obviously, none of us were there in '75.
I think, like kind of like you said, like, you know, it's different whenever you go to a movie and it's not well attended. You feel free to kind of to talk back to the movie or goof around with it. And this movie actively engages the viewer in that respect. And there is this whole kind of subculture of traditions that have been built up, like things you do when you go see it. Like certain moments when you say certain lines and things like that. Like, I could run through them all. Like, I have them written down at the end of my little narration here. But it is, I think that helped it kind of become this kind of cult phenomenon, is that once so many people kind of saw it as this oddball kind of thing and this kind of subculture formed around it, it just began kind of like a snowball rolling down a mountain, just bigger and bigger and bigger.
Interesting. And it was a business move that they decided to do this with Pink Flamingos in 1972, which was a shortlisted movie at one point that I think you suggested, DJ. Still haven't seen it. I'm a little intimidated by it.
You should watch it.
Reefer Madness is another one. These movies were making money at midnight showings, and Fox executive Tim Deegan was able to talk distributors into going to midnight screenings, starting in New York City on April Fool's Day in '76, and things started to grow across New York City, and it was in New York City thing, and apparently the LGBT community grabbed onto this one early, and it grew from there, but then it grew beyond that into sexual liberation and androgyny, and people were dressing up to come to the show, and it just steadily grew again to capturing outsiders. The punks loved it, horror enthusiasts just took to it, theater nerds, musical fans, science fiction fans, and turns out this was a good movie all along, and they just didn't know how to push it, or people weren't ready for it. Even Ebert dismissed it as a long-running social phenomenon more than a movie. He only gives it 2.5 stars and says, like, it's just more about the people who like it than it is about itself. I won't go there, would you, Bryan? No. Yeah, what would you say, Bryan?
No, I wouldn't go there. I think that there is this is one of the things I have against, I guess, modern day critical scoring of movies. I think that just because it's not your particular cup of tea doesn't mean that it deserves a lower grade. So, first time I watched it, this was so scattered to me. I was like, all right, well, like I said, that was a thing. Second time I watched it, paid a little bit more attention, got a little bit more into it. There was a point in time where every time I had anything that rhymed with Janet, and Jess and I'd be talking, I would say Janet after it, just on purpose, or like off the cuff. And it's movies that do things like that to you that's an awesome thing. So I don't feel like you can judge something like that. It's an art piece, it's like someone drawing a squiggly line on a paper and saying, oh my God, look at this. I mean, if everybody believes it's awesome, then I guess it is.
No, it's a good point. And the fanaticism has really grown. Not only do patrons dress up, they bring props. They do look-alike contests. I mean, they go all out. I mean, if you look online on Google, like Rocky Horror Picture Show fans, I mean, you're going to find all kinds of colorful images out there. And so, I mean, but people go to screenings now and they throw rice at the wedding scene. They'll bring water pistols and squirt them. And during the rain scene, newspapers, people bring those up for like the front middle of the roads to shield themselves from the rain. They bring flashlights and cigarette lighters. For the over at the Frankenstein place, the rubber gloves. During the creation speech, people snap on rubber gloves during that number. They put noisemakers to applaud Frank's creation. They do toilet paper at Scott's brand. So they say, "Great Scott," and they throw paper towel rolls. That one's stretching it a little bit, admittedly. Confetti at the reprise of the Transylvanians. They toast. They actually have like cooked toast that people throw around, you know, when they do the dinner, and the party hats when they do the happy birthday to Rocky. They have bells when they hear a doorbell, cards. Anyway, the list goes on and on. It's elaborate. I mean, there's nothing like this, is there, DJ?
Oh, no. I mean, nothing I've seen before. And also, if it's your first time going to see it, they will draw a giant V on your head for virgin, and they will haze you in some form or fashion. When I went, I think I had to eat a Twinkie off another person's crotch.
Wow. Fresh Twinkie, I hope?
A fresh Twinkie, yeah.
Okay,
It was freshly unwrapped.
Okay, yeah.
I would like to kind of compare this to kind of a plot device used in one of my favorite pieces of literature. There's a book by Neil Gaiman called American Gods, and they've recently made a TV show-ish thing off of it, but read the book. But in it, basically, the point he's trying to make is that any god, no matter what it is only as powerful as the people that believe in it. So you could say it's like the US dollar or the internet, or anything can be a god as long as somebody worships it or believes in it. So I feel like this has that power. Like there's such a following for it that it is, you know, almost a living, breathing thing at that point. And as long as people like it, as long as people adore it, as long as people are interested in it, it'll continue to thrive.
And be respectful if you go to a theater and you see it. Obviously, there's a lot of messy stuff involved here. Apparently, it's another thing to make sure the toast is buttered when you throw it around the room. And theaters have said that the sticky, slippery butter that gets all over the place, so not so kind. So be respectful.
Oh, I thought you were going to chastise people for throwing unbuttered bread. Like, do it right, guys.
Oh, well,
Put the butter, and not margarine. It better be butter.
Oh yeah, none of that. I can't believe it's not butter.
And they know. They know if it's I can't believe it's not butter, you'll be called out.
Yeah, Fabio or not, it's no margarine in this place.
To your point, Brian, I want to kind of circle back to that again, because I think it's very compelling what you kind of brought up about the issue of the god, and not only just the following of people, but the rituals that have been built up around the god. Like it's heavily ritualized, like the whole actual viewing of this movie in public.
I mean, it's a movie designed to break the rules. And so, I mean, it goes against the establishment at the time. I mean, Dr. Frankenfurter is a pansexual. He's sleeping with everybody. This is not necessarily stuff in the 70s that is on front page news and stuff like that. And things have changed quite a bit since then. So, again, my first time watching this was of utter shock. I was like, wow, he's just going for it with this guy, and oh wait, now he likes the ladies too, and he's sleeping with everybody, and everybody's having a good time. This is it's pretty much an orgy castle, and it's one of the things where you come back to it though, and the shock's not there anymore. What is there though is the music's really good. Yeah. Like it's just downright fun. It takes stuff from the 50s. It takes references from old science fiction and other old horror movies that are B movies and stuff like that. And it hits the right notes at just being fun. I think that's why everyone keeps coming back to it again and again and again. Why don't we go into the cast rundown? Brian.
Absolutely. Totally not on the right screen for it, but that's all right. All right. We'll start from the top and go with Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenfurter, a scientist. Susan Sarandon as Janet Weiss, not Vice. Barry Bostwick as Brad Majors. Richard O'Brien as Riffraff. Patricia Quinn as Magenta, Nell Campbell as Columbia, Jonathan Adams as Dr. Everett V. Scott, Peter Hinwood as Rocky Horror, A Creation, Meatloaf as Eddie. Is a movie just instantly better with Meatloaf?
I like Meatloaf.
I think mashed potatoes are.
If you can put Meatloaf, I feel like he was the original Eddie Izzard. No disrespect to Eddie Izzard. Charles Gray as the criminologist and Jeremy Newsom as Ralph Hapshett. I'll just stop there.
Sure. Impressive cast. This movie takes a lot of people from the play version, and they actually looked at doing a heavier cast of people. Mick Jagger wanted to play Dr. Frankenfurter in this film, and I could kind of see it.
I would have backed that. Oh, I'll also say that hats off to this cast for being the only one that I've read on this show where I didn't feel like I massacred someone's name.
Yes, it's pronounced Frankenfurter.
It's good. It's Loaf.
Oh, excuse me.
It's not meatloaf. It's Loaf.
And Vice.
Yeah.
Meatloaf.
So in a radio interview, The Fresh Air, Tim Curry said that he got to meet Prince Charles and Princess Diana because she loved Curry so much in this film that Curry recalled when he met Diana that he was placed at the end of her long receiving line, and Prince Charles was only vaguely recognizing him and kind of passing him on. And then Diana was really excited, smiled at him, and said, "The Rocky Horror quite completed my education," and she was a big Curry fan in that. So it meant a lot to him that the princess liked it. What are some other fun cast things that you found, DJ?
Well, Susan Sarandon was sick for most of it because they were filming in the cold and wet, and the castle they were filming in was also cold and wet. It was leaking, and they had one room to retreat to with heat and warmth. They all kind of did tag team, who got in there. And a lot of the cast members say that she probably should have gone to a doctor. She was in rough shape, but she stuck it through and made it happen. So, hats off to her.
Yep, she played it through.
I was shocked about Sarandon. I had no idea she was in this. I knew about Tim Curry just because I feel like that one was widely publicized, and he's kind of the face of the movie. I didn't really know many of the other people in this movie outside of Meatloaf. But doing a bunch of research on them, I found out, several of them are in other movies I've liked, and that's just been kind of a Genesis project, I suppose.
Absolutely. Tim Curry, going back to him, on that same interview in Fresh Air, that he said playing Dr. Frankenfurter, he actually started with a German accent, but he thought it was too cliche, and that when he heard a woman on the bus speaking high, exaggerated English that reminded him of the Queen Elizabeth, he combined the elements of his mother's telephone voice with Queen Elizabeth, and
Fantastic.
And it results in Dr. Frankenfurter's. And so he said his mother, for the record, liked the movie. She was a pretty hip lady, and she enjoyed the show, that despite its racy content, although she preferred his performance in Pirates and Penzance more. So, and the Queen actually came to that performance. As I mentioned before, Tim Curry and Meatloaf, Little Nell, and Richard O'Brien all come from the stage performance. And that's really interesting. It's something I criticize a lot of movies for that go into doing modern musicals. I often think that you just got somebody who's a big name actor and you plugged him into this to get butts in the seat. And yeah, it got butts in the seat, but they can't sing as well usually. I'm going to go pick on a movie Les Mis. Did either of you guys see Les Mis?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it was a hard pass for me.
Well, it's problematic because half the cast can sing okay, and half of them can't sing at all, and then out of nowhere there's this character named Eponine, and she gets on the stage, she gets one number, and she belts it, and she's awesome, and she's on the Broadway show, and she's a nobody as far as the acting world goes, and she's the only one, in my opinion, who can Hathaway did a fine job, and but I mean, really, there's people who sing at a very, very, very high level. And so, as much as I can kind of see Mick Jagger doing this, I'm really glad that they took all the stage people who helped shape these characters. Because when you're an actor on stage, you're helping to create this character and bring it to life. And you're a pro at it. You're doing it multiple times. And so this is just an elevation of that. And so my note is it works really well here. Movies do that more often.
I know I should know Barry Bostwick too, but I only know him from this.
I mean, it's been a zillion years since I've seen Spy Hard. I know my wife watches a lot of Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, but I've never sat down and...
Oh, wow. I just looked up an image of him now. He looks different.
Oh, no, right? He looks like someone you'd see on, like, the A-Team.
Totally, yeah.
I don't know what Helen Keller versus the Night Wolves is, but I'm interested.
That sounds good. A little interesting, yeah.
He was in the modern day classic, The Scorpion King 4, Quest for Power.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's...
Clearly his career has been working out for him.
Right. He is in a lot of stuff. It looks like he does anywhere between like 4 to 6 projects a year.
Wow, okay.
So, I mean, he's not without work, even if they are small parts.
Steve Martin auditions for the role of Brad. DJ, do you want to see Steve Martin playing Brad?
No, I did recast him possibly as the narrator, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Okay. And Vincent Price was offered the role of the criminologist, but he turned it down due to scheduling conflicts and was interested in the role, though. So
He would have been good.
yeah, quite.
Can I make I want to make a statement about this movie, and I just want to know your all's true or false on this. After watching the time warp number, that's how far I was in the movie when I made the statement to my wife. I said, this movie looks like it was way more fun to be in than watch.
Well, it was hard work because they were all cold and, multiple takes being what it is. That pool scene, like when they're swimming in that pool, that is a very cold pool and everybody's shivering and it's, so I don't know. It's the reports say it was pretty
Miserable.
Pretty hard work to get through, but it's one of those things where so often you're right. The joyous tones of the music and stuff like that, it does make it look like it would be fun.
Yeah.
The set had no bathrooms either, as you pointed out. So it was super cold, super wet and leaky, but no bathrooms makes it no fun. So
off to the pee corner. Well, one of the things I do miss about high school is, as much as I wasn't a huge fan of doing the musicals when we did, drama club, I missed the actual production of the thing. So whatever we were doing, I miss the camaraderie and the fun you have while doing it. And when I was watching this, I was like, this is a pretty off-the-wall thing. And my folks still have recordings of performances I did that I have never watched, and I have no desire to. But I look back on actually doing it fondly because of everything that took to put it together.
If you had to be in the show, Bryan, what character are you playing? Drama Club, go.
Oh, no, I just want to be one of the, I want to be the peanut gallery.
Okay, I'll be in Riff Raff.
Like just,
I want to do that. I want to do the creepy, sulky guy. Plus, you get to also kick off the time warp. So
no, it's just all those people that get to basically say, "Hey, I was in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I basically just did one dance number and then peanut galleried it the rest of the time."
And DJ?
Oh, Dr. Frankenfurter.
Perfect. Yeah.
But to your point, Bryan, like I would have loved to have been on the set hanging out with Tim Curry because I think that would have been fun.
Sure.
And I should point out, this is our third Tim Curry effort so far this year on this show. We did Three Musketeers.
No, I'm struggling to think of which other. I was like, I remember Three Musketeers.
Yeah, we did.
It. Did you do it?
No.
No, we didn't do it.
Not only is this DJ's third time, this is Tim Curry's third time. Third movie for him. So he did Clue and he did Three Musketeers from the show. So, yes, that was smooth. So let's talk soundtrack. DJ, this is an impeccable soundtrack. What do you think about this?
I love this soundtrack. It's really good. Top 3 songs for me are going to be Time Warp, Sweet Transvestite, and I Can Make You a Man. I should also mention all of these were written by Richard O'Brien, who plays Riff Raff, which I think is a pretty compelling story. He was very interested in glam rock and kind of the scene at the time.
That's right, there are glam rock influences here too.
Oh yeah, but heavy, yeah.
Yeah, good point. But there's that old roots rock in there as well, which that stuff just strikes a chord in me. I always love that stuff. Bryan, what about you, man? What are some high points from the soundtrack?
So my top 3 were Over at Frankenstein Place, Time Warp, and I'm Going Home. I'm Going Home being probably the one that I felt had the most feeling in the movie.
That's a fair statement. And maybe these are basic picks, but I'm going to go with The Time Warp is definitely my favorite. And Damn It, Janet is just, it gets in your head. I leave doing it. And then science fiction double feature with the lips at the beginning. And funny story about that, Mary and I were watching this, and the lips are on the screen, and they're yellow, and everything's black, and I'm sitting there going like, I really remember these being red. And then, and so I'm sitting there, I get through the whole thing, and I was just like, I don't remember this being this way. And so I'm just going with it. They get to the church scene, which is the opening scene, and everything's very desaturated, and I'm like, something's not right. I remember this being a very colorful movie. I was like, maybe it's like The Wizard of Oz. And so we watched all the way through the church scene, and they get to a sign, a billboard behind them, and I know for a fact that is red. And then I realize something's not right. I go down and I jostle the component cords on the DVD player, and sure enough, the red had just been slightly knocked adjusted. So I went back and I watched the red lips from the beginning. So I watched everything again from the beginning, and so turns out it's not as good when the lips are yellow. They're not as enticing.
Figures.
Yeah, let's go through the soundtrack. Science fiction double feature. Great way to kick things off. It's one of my high points in the movie. A lot of references to other movies that are in there, including The Day the Earth Stood Still, Flash Gordon, The Invisible Man, King Kong from 33, It Came from Outer Space, Dr. X, Forbidden Planet, Tarantula, Invasion of the
Faster, Russell, faster.
Trappids, Curse of the Demon, and When the Worlds Collide. So many movies are referred to in this. I haven't seen hardly any of these, so it doesn't really... The references aren't connecting for me, but I love that the people who love it are enthusiastic about this right off the bat. It shows you where on its sleeve, right off the beginning, what this movie is born out of. Bryan, Damn It, Janet, what do you take on this one?
I will eventually get in trouble for knowing this song because my mother-in-law's name is Janet, and I feel like I'm going to execute this song frequently around her now, and sooner or later just might hit me.
It really gets in your head. Like this is the one that I'll be singing like 3 or 4 days later, amongst other ones. But this one just continues to pop back into my head. So, and I love Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn standing there with these droll faces, and everybody else around them's joyous and happy, and they just kind of have this monotone, somber, like Janet.
Yeah. Did you see Tim Curry in the background too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. First time I ever noticed that.
So, does it remind you of any kind of paintings, that first scene? Any reference?
Yes. Old Man Pitchfork.
American Gothic.
American Gothic. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They definitely are playing on that. That's so much fun.
I love when they do that.
There's a light over at the Frankenstein place. I like this one a lot. I like the residence that they kind of have in there, like as they look to the light of the Frankenstein place, and then they look up to the window. Some good. These are actually some. I'm not going to pick this for my best shot, so I don't have to say that. I don't have to hold back here. But this is actually some of my favorite cinematography
In the movie, really?
Yeah, like when they're first coming up there and they're approaching, they got their little newspapers over their heads and stuff like that. So I love it. So DJ, The Time Warp.
The Time Warp. Well, this is one of the essential songs in this movie. Like, you know, they've all just been welcomed into the creepy Frankenstein castle. Riff Raff is escorting them into this room. He goes to adjust a clock, which is actually a coffin with a body in it, an old a skeleton. And then they break into song and dance, and I love how at the end, like, Brad kind of dismisses it as like it's this kind of cultural phenomenon. They want to be polite, not offend these people.
Yeah.
They're probably just gonna do some more cultural dances. Just don't worry about it, Janet. We'll be fine. And
so typical, like, don't worry about it.
And then I love the whole like refrain when like the narrator explains the steps to the dance itself, and like he breaks it down like an old school like 19.
That is one of the best parts.
I love it.
The interruptions from Charles Gray coming in. It's just a jump to the right.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
A jump.
Hands on your hips.
Yeah. It's a jump to the left and then a step to the right, and then you put your hands on your hips, and then you bend in tight, do the pelvic thrust, and a bumble swing.
I get a little fuzzy on that one too.
Yeah.
But I've been fact checked. Thank you. Sweet Transvestite. This one was also in your top 3.
I love this one. It's so good. I don't have much words about like the kind of lyrics about it. I mean, obviously he's kind of explaining his somewhat life story. We don't kind of get from him yet that he's an alien, but we figure that out much later. It's just such a sexy song, and the way Tim Curry does it with so much damn confidence, like I love it. The whole thing when he just comes down the elevator, the doors fling open, Janet screams, and then it's outrageous.
Bravado, bravado, bravado. He owns it. And I think it's interesting. You see on him that he has a tattoo that says boss. And it lets you know right away that Frank's in charge. And it's one of those things that he does not let Brad or Eddie or Dr. Scott or anybody take his masculinity away from him, despite the fact that he's cross-dressed. Dr. Frankenfurter runs the show. And nobody's going to be disrupting his norm, which is no norm. And this song establishes that right away.
Right off the bat.
Bryan, any thoughts on that one?
No, I was going to say that I feel like that really started to set the tone for the rest of the movie. Time warp and that kind of combined to really knock off what you can expect from the rest of this movie. And I got to say, I think it's kind of where the fun starts, right?
Absolutely. Time warp and then that. But you're right, back to back for sure.
Well, I mean, but they're right on top of each other. So it's like that's sort of the... and now what you got into.
Yeah. It goes from being like, this is weird to like, it got weird.
Yeah.
It just got weird.
Yeah. Make You a Man. DJ?
This is a good one. So this is one that is sung mainly by Dr. Frankenfurter, where he's kind of talking about his creation, Rocky, and the various exercise routines that he's going to have him do that will make him a man, basically, or keep his manly physique. It's, I don't know, Peter Hinwood, I believe is the actor's name.
I think so.
Is a beautiful, beautiful man. And so it's just, this song is really just to look at his body and just to marvel at it. So I'm okay with it. I don't mind it.
For me, this number drags a little bit because you've come off of the time warp.
Yes.
And you've come off of Sweet Transvestite. And we're going big. We're going big. And this one slows things down a little bit for us. So when Eddie comes in, then I feel like he breaks through the wall and like he's a jolt of energy. But it comes to an abrupt end as he's murdered. Hot Patootie / Bless My Soul, performed by Eddie and the Transylvanians. I love Eddie. I wish he had been in the movie more. Unfortunately, he meets an early death. Richard O'Brien brought out the music of Meatloaf saying it's okay to flub a few lines. No one ever does this right on stage. But then he came out super sharp and nailed everything correctly right away. He looked at it and replied, "What's the problem?" DJ, Hot Patootie.
I like it. It's good. I don't know. Like, this is one of those songs where they lose me in it. Like, and then Eddie gets killed mysteriously, somewhat. Like,
I feel like it ends abruptly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's a tone shift, as what Bryan was saying. We're having fun. And it's like, oh,
here's a little bit of murder.
Yeah, there's murder involved here.
Who doesn't want just a little bit of murder?
All right, so continuing with the soundtrack, Bryan, Touch It, Touch It, Touch Me, and then Eddie. What do you like about these songs here?
I don't have a whole lot to add to either of those, really. A lot of these were kind of... nook and cranny songs that I'm not belittling, just that they were... It's like making a song just saying what's going on at that time. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't call them big iconic pieces of this movie.
For me, they pick the energy up. And
really?
I can see that.
Yeah. Okay. Like, again, Eddie comes in his motorcycle. He's running people off the ramp. I mean, and that's... So you're saying that these are filler for you, Bryan? Like the three Eddie numbers?
I don't want to call it filler. That's just a discredit to it. It's more like these aren't things that stick out in the movie for me. And then as far as Touch Me goes, that was probably the most irritating song in the movie for me.
You don't like Little Nell's high-pitched voice?
There's a whole lot to it that I was just like, all right, I'm good. Can this stop now?
So we go into Planet Schmanet Janet. Wise Up Janet Weiss. This is another one that's got in my head for the first time this time, and I really like this one. I had not remembered this one, and the calamity of the steps turning into a ramp and the wheelchair flying up things. Again, we're having a lot of fun, and things have gone full out zany here after Brad and Janet have some infidelity and stuff like that. And so hijinks is ensuing again here. Is this one fun for you, DJ?
It is, yeah. Like, I'm going to echo back what's been said. Like, for me, the high points occur early on in the movie, and I don't really get a similar kind of feeling song towards the end. Like,
so you're starting to fade.
I'm going down the hill now.
That's interesting because I have that take, but after they're turned into statues. Because once they go into the next world, that's when I also start to go like, wait, what? Bryan, what about you? Are you fading with DJ at this point, or are you still on board?
Oh, I'll definitely agree that the high point of this movie is at the beginning, or we're close to the beginning, with Time Warp and Sweet Transvestite. But, I mean, there are a couple up numbers in here, but I had a harder time with some of them because of the high-pitched nature of them. I didn't feel like they were as catchy, and I didn't feel like the dancing was nearly as... I feel like Time Warp was just too hard to follow up.
Okay, so you're with DJ, then you're starting to fade. Now, we've turned into statues, and we come on the other side. Planet Hot Dog, again, I like this one a fair bit, but then I start to fade for Rose Tent My World, and Don't Dream It, Be It, and Wild and Untamed Thing. This is where I'm starting to really fade. And DJ, you're nodding your head. Yeah, and I probably won't go into those as much, and I'm sorry if you love these songs, but I just can't get excited for this one as much. For me, the movie, the first time I watched this, I was just like enticed by the whole thing, and then I was confused. Like, I literally thought I went away for the commercial break and missed something important to the plot. The second time, I was just like, I'm not interested in this. This doesn't make any sense. And then coming back to it and really studying it now, I'm sitting there going like, I really want to like this part of it, but it's just really hard. I liked it so much better when they were on Earth.
Yeah.
And then, Bryan, you said you like I'm Going Home.
Yeah, I feel like that was the song with the most feeling.
Yeah. So, what do we think about director? The film is based on the Rocky Horror Show, which is a stage play written by Richard O'Brien, who created it from his love of classic science fiction B-horror movies. He is also Riff Raff in the movie. So, this movie gets credited for being Tim Curry because he's awesome. But Richard O'Brien wrote this while being out of work as an actor. Pretty good, pretty productive bout of unemployment, wouldn't you say, DJ?
I would definitely agree with that. Like, I think, it's awesome that he did this and he made it happen.
Yeah, he was trying to play off of Steve Reeves' muscle flips from the 50s, putting rock and roll music that fueled his musical inspiration, and then glam rock, as DJ had mentioned. It all comes into this at the right way, at the right time. So O'Brien showed a portion of the unfinished script to the Australian director Jim Sharman, who decided to direct it at the small experimental space in the upstairs Royal Court Theatre in London. Sharman would also bring in production designer Brian Thompson. The original creative team was then rounded out by costume designer Susan Blaine and musical director Jim Hartley and the stage producer Michael White, who was all brought in to produce this.
We're going to say produced by Lou Alder, Michael White, kind of the culminating event, brings it all together, the director, the costuming, the sets, everything.
Yeah. Again, the studios came, so all these people were together, and so they brought this stage crew into the movie world, which I've already praised, but the studios wanted a much larger budget. They wanted a bigger cast, and it was, Sharman insisted upon keeping the original cast with no compromise and accepted a much smaller budget and agreed on the American actors as the roles because this movie said you got to have some Americans in there. So Brad and Janet became American because it was a very British, grouping beforehand. And so Tim Curry, Richard O'Brien, Patricia, Quinn, and Little Nell were all created from their original productions. Meatloaf did the Los Angeles production as well. And so that brought everybody under the roof here together. So, Bryan, is it... I talked about it already a little bit, but in terms of transitioning a musical to a play, why don't you think you see this more often?
I think that we're getting a little dangerously into some of my my picks for later, so I don't want to do what I usually do and ruin something.
Okay.
So we're getting kind of close to it again. So I'm going to soft pass on this until a little bit later.
No. What do you think about director Jim Sharman, DJ, which is really...
So honestly, like, outside of this movie, I'm not really familiar with much of his work other than this. With that being said, however, I think that this was done exceptionally well. I think it's always difficult to adapt a musical, a play, to a movie setting. It is different. It's much different being in front of an audience versus being behind a camera and not being able to read off of the audience's laughter or body language or things like that. So I think he did a great job. Again, like I said, I'm not familiar with the rest of his work. Sorry about that. Sorry if you really like him.
He's a stage director. He's associated with over 70 stage productions.
I know.
So in keeping with Tim Curry and the actors Little Nell and Richard O'Brien,
He was brought in from.
So we have a stage director also making the jump to movies as well.
To movies.
So O'Brien also produced a sequel called Shock Treatment.
Yes.
Have you seen this?
I have, yes.
Can you tell me about this one? Because I haven't seen it.
Okay, I'm not going to be able to neatly wrap this up for you, but very vaguely, it happens after the fact, and it's kind of not really that related at all.
None of the cast comes back,
None
right?
of the cast comes back. An element that is kind of hinted at in Rocky Horror that is then kind of picked up and taken to an extreme point in this in Shock Treatment is reality TV. Specifically, I'm talking about when they're in the bedrooms and they're seeing into other people's rooms as they're either having sex with Frankenfurter or whoever else it may be. It's that, like, times a lot.
So how is this a sequel?
I honestly don't know. And it has not gotten good reviews. A lot of people don't like it. There are some issues with it. But with that being said, I do think that Shock Treatment was ahead of its time in that it's dealing with issues of reality television, and you couldn't really appreciate it when it came out, not until much later after The Real World and things like this come out.
So it does not help make more sense of Rocky Horror Picture Show.
No, absolutely not.
Dang it! That's what I was looking. I was coming to you. I was coming to you for hope to clarify that. So
nope.
Yeah, Bryan, what do you think about Jim Sharman as a director?
I mean, this is definitely a very interestingly shot movie. But it's also fairly simplistic. So I have a hard time really giving much commentary on it just because it's such a unique piece. I don't mean to cop out on this. It's just one of those things where without maybe seeing some more of what he does so I can pin, this is something he likes to do, or that's something he likes to do, or this is what he really adds to it. In this vacuum, I have a hard time really commenting on it.
I criticized him initially for saying that his storytelling was bad, but then I got to stop and remember that is not his fault. That's the music. The musical's already written, the play's already written, the play's loose structured. It's maybe nonsensical, and so that's not his fault. In fact, I actually went back and I gave Sharman a lot of credit. I like the look of when they go to the other planet. It does feel like you're on stage because they're literally on a stage at one point. And I do like the pool and some of the I would call them stage tricks that are being filmed. I liked that a good bit. And so I liked the look of this. The castle was cool, and then there's this abrupt change, and then he's taking you to another planet. And I got to give him credit for that. So it's got style, even if the music and the play and the story fail you. Really, we can't really fault him with any of that, because as a director, that's not under your control here. A little bit different than a normal production. And so I'm going to give him credit for landing the style in the field, because it feels creepy when you want to feel creepy. Like, you want to be off-put at times. You want to feel uneasy, like Brad and Janet at some point. Like, wait, there's murder involved here? And so I got to give him credit there. So, and then also I picked up on the director's love letter to science fiction and horror. The little red lasers coming out of Riff Raff's gun and stuff like that is definitely a callback to B movies as well. Editing. When Barry Bostwick pounds his fist on the table during the dinner scene, he accidentally pounds the hand of Susan Sarandon. She was angry at this, but then later on she steps on his foot with the spike of her heel. Both of these are still in the movie, so you can find those. So we're in 1974. What's interesting about the beginning of this movie, DJ?
Well, so if you go to Wikipedia or IMDb and read a plot synopsis for this, they tell you that it takes place in early to late November of 1974. I disagree with this because early on, when Brad and Janet are in the car riding to meet their friend, we hear Richard Nixon's resignation address to America, which occurred on August the 4th, 1974 at 9 p.m. at night.
Interesting. So what do you think the significance of that is? Just Brad's a square?
I mean, yeah, possibly like alluding to kind of his political leanings, maybe also alluding to kind of the end of an era, whether it be like the actual administration itself or the 60s are finally over in terms of what that represented as a moment in time. I mean, we had a president assassinated, we had free love and sex, we had all these like crazy things happen in America. It was truly the coming of age for this country. And now we're in the 70s and we're about to go into the energy crisis and all these other crazy things are going to happen to us, and it's going to get real.
Absolutely. Bryan, what did you think about the Bray Studios in Oakley Court, the dilapidated country house?
Yeah, I think it's perfect. I think it fits right in with over at Frankenstein Place. I felt like that song especially really did a lot to set the mood for the more horror-ish Hitchcock-ness of the beginning of the movie before some of the more pizzazz took over. It's actually my favorite song from this, just because it was taking something that could have been made eerie and scary and making it, musical, which I feel like automatically lightens the mood and feeds better into Time Warp. So, yeah, I don't know. I dig it.
The Oakley Court is in Windsor, England, and it's the same location that was used for Brides of Dracula in 1960. Now the Screaming Starts in 1973, The Old Dark House in 1963, and Murder by Death in 1976. So this is now a luxury hotel, so you too can go there and do the time warp again yourself.
It's good old Murder by Death.
Yeah. Any atmospheric comments, DJ?
I just had set in a spooky castle, but the interior appears much more inviting and modern than the exterior.
Yeah.
At least once you get out of the entryway.
That's true, yeah.
I like that the church is a absolute flat set. I was watching the commentary on this one, and it's really ghetto. And they could only shoot it from straight on. Like it's like it tilted up. And so when you're in the church, also the room's really tiny when you stop and like look at it. So again, it's stage direction from Jim Sharman coming through here, rather than finding a church and really shooting it there. There's some small scale tricks there. And so the set builders forgot to put on an extra door in the lab set as well. Thus, Dr. Scott had to crash through the wall on his wheelchair. So that's another fun little thing. So I was wondering, I was like, that's a very Looney Tunes moment.
Yeah.
What do you think about the look of what they were wearing, DJ?
Well, I love the costumes. Like, I mean, obviously Brad and Janet are your typical squares, so they're just kind of like very straightforward as we meet them. However, most of the movie they're in their underwear.
Plain white underwear.
Plain white underwear. I want to know if Brad's character has a prosthesis in his pants or something, because there's a monster there.
Maybe that's why I got cast. I don't know.
Jess swears up and down that it's fake. She was
it's
like,
fake.
Yeah, she was like, that's stuffed. I'll also say that is the scariest part of this movie was his underwear.
I mean, if he...
that's the most horrifying pair of underwear.
Yes. And if he gets an erection, he's going to pass out. But, I mean, so more costumes like Frankenfurter. I always just look at that character and I'm like, I want every piece of clothing. Like, the original corset and underwear with the shoes is beautiful. The jacket he wears to dinner is really nice with all the medals and things on it, all the trinkets. There's also another kind of a black kind of bell-like sleeve kind of top he wears. Love Frankenfurter's outfits.
Yeah. He's the big hair, especially. It's just like this bigger-than-life kind of component and to his character. The lab costume was off-putting.
Oh, yes.
When he needs to go full-blown off-putting and creepy mad scientist, he somehow that's a big change for the character when he puts that on. Perfect for murdering.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Fun fact on that one, there is a triangle on that costume over his heart, which a lot of people have kind of read into about in Nazi Germany. Homosexuals in the concentration camps wore a triangle, upside down triangle over their heart. And this one is right side up.
Oh, fighting back. Good detail catch there. Bryan, what do you think about the look of things once we go into outer space? We're turned into statues, and then we come out, and now we have clown makeup on. Like, everybody's got white face, exaggerated features, and everybody's wearing lingerie, whether it be Susan Sarandon, Barry Bostwick, or even Dr. Scott.
I don't know. I was just kind of running with it at this point. I was just like, all right, sure. Why not? I would say that this was probably the point in the movie where Jess and I were not being the most studious watchers. And I don't mean to say that we weren't paying attention. I just went a little Mystery Science Theater at this point, and I was kind of just doing my own thing.
Well, I take it that this is Frank's in charge, or Frankenfurter's in charge, and that this is his posse, and that this is how you should dress your part of, like, these are the uniforms of my, my posse or my crew or, my underlings, however you want to put it. I do find it odd, though, that Riff Raff and Magenta were never dressed this way, and they were under him as well. And while we're on it, I can't figure out the meaning of why Magenta and Riff Raff are the ones that kind of pull a Judas or a Brutus and kind of end up...
You say Jakku.
Yeah, it seems odd to me, because I was talking to DJ earlier.
Really? I mean, Frankenfurter's a...
I mean, he whipped him, there's no doubt about it, but what I'm getting at is... So, Frankenfurter represents sexual liberation to me. Like, he takes these squares, and he invites them into this world... this wild, crazy orgy world. He's creating people for pleasure and all this world, and he has these rules and stuff like that. And these guys are from his home planet as well, but they're the ones who turn on him. And that was the part of it that made me confused. It was almost as if to say the establishment's going to put you down, but it wasn't Dr. Scott doing it. It wasn't Barry Bostwick turning on them and saying, like, I'm gonna stop this. The fact they were lured into this world. And it was his own guys who did this. So what makes me wonder, without saying, like, was Dr. Frankenfurter an outcast from his planet? Did he come to America to behave this way, and his own people went with him, but then realized that this monster's gone too far? It's all... Am I reading too far? I'm thinking too much again, aren't I?
I think so, yeah. But, like, I mean, that's one of the dangers of this movie, is that I feel like it is kind of like a Rorschach image where they give you just enough to read into, and you can kind of fill in the blanks and go from there. I mean, we could also say Frankenfurter represents capitalism and its co-opting of sexuality, and that it's an identity that can be bought and sold to you, and all these other things. Like it's never ending.
Interesting.
But he did abuse them, and Riff Raff does make a point to say he was mean to me, and I didn't like it. So maybe that was simply the reason.
Could be. No, you could be right.
I mean, if you... All right, let's go this direction with you. Okay, so if they're all from the same planet, Frankenfurter murdered Eddie over far less than what those two went through. So you could say that the aliens are predisposed to murder, or you could say that everybody who died had it coming in one way or the other, or you can say, I mean, there's so many different directions you can take with this. I wasn't that shocked.
Okay. One interesting thing here is talking about the effects here. A stunt double was used on a motorcycle scene, except for the close-ups where Meatloaf was driving, but a motorcycle was too dangerous, so they pushed a wheelchair rigged up with handlebars for the windshield in front of the camera. And so a stuntman drove the motorcycle, but at one point the bike fell off the top tier, landed upside down, pinning the stuntman underneath it. Meatloaf ran over and lifted the bike off of him, and the stuntman did not move for some time. Everybody's flipping out, and the stuntman got up later saying he was okay and just was like, messing with you. Not a thing for a stuntman to do.
Yeah. Not cool.
But the wheelchair wasn't safe either. The wheelchair hit a ridge at the bottom of the ramp and it sent Meatloaf flying towards the floor, shattering both the camera and the windshield as well. He's a big guy, though, so... Look for this. Any moments? Look for this moments, DJ?
Obviously, the pounding of the fist at the dining room table. You see this. Susan Sarandon later steps on some people's toes in the dance scene. I mentioned the kind of references to homosexuals in Nazi Germany. Yeah, that's it.
Bryan, do you have any look for this moments?
Yeah, I actually, the one thing I wanted to bring up is Nell is also a groupie in Pink Floyd's The Wall. So another musical, another part where she is a groupie.
Interesting. And she has a wardrobe malfunction, I think, in the movie, and they kept it in there. Her corset's totally slides down.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I missed it.
Yeah.
I was good with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's during the marionette scene.
Mm-hmm. What my look for this is going to be in Zoolander 2, and uncredited as Susan Sarandon speaks the lines, touch it, touch me. I want to be dirty, to Owen Wilson's character. It's a direct reference to Rocky Horror, so. Superlative time, my favorite time. DJ, are you ready to hand out some awards with us?
Let's do it.
MVP.
Tim Curry. How could you not?
It's true. Bryan?
Oh, absolutely. There's not really another option for this.
It's his third time on the show, and it's my third time giving him a big award here. So MVP goes to Tim Curry.
Boom.
And Best Supporting Actor, DJ.
I said Susan Sarandon.
Interesting. How come?
Knowing what I know about the pneumonia and just her health issues, I thought she did a good job. So I was like, okay.
Okay, yeah, just she's a trooper and powered through. Frye, what about you? Best Supporting?
I also went with Susan Sarandon's Janet, although I have a little asterisk next to it for Columbia's Nell.
More on that later. Best Supporting Actor, I'm going to go with Richard O'Brien. The guy wrote the thing. I mean, he's part of the... I mean, he could easily come away with MVP, but Tim Curry's just so awesome. I went with Richard O'Brien for this one. Riff Raff is awesome. He's just creepy, and I like the way he always looks at at the camera with his dark inset eyes and the long blonde hair that's with a bald top. He's just such a creepy dude. His motions are great, and he kicks off the Time Warp, which is my favorite song, perfectly. So, Hidden Gem, DJ.
I'm going to say Peter Hinwood just because he's pretty to look at.
That's a fine choice. And Bryan, Hidden Gem.
Hidden Gem for me is completely empty. Sorry. Apparently I missed one. I'll reacquire Columbia's Nell Campbell from Asterisk Supporting as my Hidden Gem. I thought she added a lot to this. I'm glad that she was actually named in the cast, not just a groupie, because that's kind of what had Columbia, a groupie. But I think she definitely added a lot to this film.
I want to give it to Tim Curry for also being the preacher and the beginning at the church, but I'm not going to. I got to go with Charles Gray. The narrator is just awesome. I mean, his explanation of how to do the time warp, as well as his interludes in there, are great. And every time he leaves, they have a different cut transition too that are extra B-movie quality transitions across the screen. So I enjoy every time he's on the screen. Love him. DJ, if you had to recast somebody, who would it be and who are you putting in their place?
I had a hard time coming up with a recast for this.
Me too. It's kind of difficult.
I feel like the characters are... You see so many movies where you're like, okay, I could have seen different ways you could have gone with this, but this is such a unique thing that I have a really difficult time just being like, oh, change this.
Totally, yeah. And it seems like they're more untouchables than there are touchables.
You know what? One of the things that I was thinking during this is who really needed to be in this was Christopher Lee.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe as the professor, I don't know, but I just remember thinking at one point this needs some of those deep tones that he brings to the table.
Yeah, I could see that.
I literally have in my notes recast Christopher Lee ? As ?
It's like go.
Because, I mean, you can't recast Tim Curry.
No, you cannot touch that, yeah.
And then I had no idea Susan Sarandon was in this, so that was awesome. So I can't touch that either. And then he's not really young enough to play anybody else besides maybe Dr. Everett. Maybe I'll just go with that.
I like that. That can work. Well, I think this is especially difficult for this movie in particular, but I have to do it, so I will. I'm going to say Chevy Chase as the narrator.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Because I don't know, for some reason I could just easily picture him taking it to a little bit more zany, and I think that could kind of play in nicely with the overall themes going on here, but...
Okay, we're going to place Charles Gray with Chevy Chase. I think he'd actually make a pretty awesome Brad, too, actually. I think he could do that.
I can see that.
Yeah. Bryan, recast.
My recast is going to be Dr. Everett V. Scott. I would like him recast as Christopher Lee.
Ooh, fun. I'm going to recast Susan Sarandon.
What?
I know. Yeah, I was afraid that you guys weren't going to like that. I don't think she's as vocally gifted as the rest of the cast. And it does show. And
pneumonia.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And while she looks the part, and she definitely has the timid nature about her, I felt like she was not in the same vocal league as Tim Curry and Barry Bostwick and Richard O'Brien. I felt like she was the one who just didn't have the vocals. And so with that, I'm going to reach for Anne Margaret She is 5 years older, but she's a very pretty lady who would also do a really good job at this. You might know her from Grumpy Old Men later. She's the hot senior citizen older woman as the grumpy old men fight over. But also back in the day, she did some Elvis movies. She did Bye Bye Birdie, but she also did Tommy, which is a rock opera, and that's why she came to my mind as well. She sang pretty well in that as well. So, and Margaret, best shot, DJ.
I like the wedding scene at the beginning with this whole kind of allusion to the American Gothic painting.
No, that's good. Bryan, what is your best shot?
Best shot is going to be basically everything with Meatloaf. I loved all the close-up visuals you got from the motorcycle scene and then his eventually and untimely death.
I'm going to go with that as well. The murder scene. The low point of view with the fog, and as Dr. Frankenfurter steps towards the screen with that scowl on his face. It's intimidating. It's good. And I want to give a shout out to the lips on the black screen. They're supposed to be red, not yellow. That's just a great way to start the movie off. Best scene, DJ?
The pool scene. I like it when they're in the water and kind of dancing and kind of flailing around, singing.
And what about you, Bryan?
Probably the time warp dance.
It's a good choice.
I mean, that whole part, especially where it keeps cutting back to the criminologist, that was easily the most fun.
I'm going to go with the dinner scene that then turns into the hijinks going up, with them pursuing as Janet's running from Dr. Frankenfurter at the table, the unveiling of Eddie's body. That's a great scene. And the director didn't tell people that was going to be there, so that was genuine surprise on a lot of people's parts. So good job on the director. That was genuine surprise. Change one thing, DJ.
So I wouldn't change anything. I just want a little more clarity. Why are the aliens there? Why are they interested in creating new life? Like, I just want to know. Like, please tell me.
That was mine as well. I need a motive.
Yeah.
Like, why did he come here? Just simply that. What about you, Bryan?
Oh, my one thing. Oh, yeah. Sorry. This is what I was alluding to earlier. My biggest issue with this, and you guys got so dangerously close to it twice. I can't stand lip syncing. It drives me nuts. I would have loved to. I don't care how good or bad their vocals are. I would have loved this to actually have been sung. It's like watching bad dubbing for language film. I don't know. It's a irritant of mine.
Okay, DJ, what is your best quote of the movie?
I see you shiver with anticipation.
And what about you, Bryan?
It's not easy having a good time. Even smiling makes my face ache.
That was perfectly delivered, and that was mine too. Good impression. It's time to rate this movie on a 5-star scale, half-star intervals. DJ, what would you give the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
I'm going to say 4.5.
4.5?
Yeah.
And it's the incoherent story that's docking it for you?
Yes.
Yeah. What about you, Bryan?
I'm going to give it a 4, and it took a rewatch. It was initially going to get kind of a low rating for me just because it seemed so... I mean, you can have wacky for wacky's sake, but there was just so much going on, and it was a lot to really digest all at once. But like I said, once I had a chance to let it settle and then rewatch, and then the rewatch was the UK version. So I don't know. I kind of settled on it, and I can fully respect this film for nuances, even the ones I've yet to glean.
I'm with you, Bryan. I was gonna. My first time watching it, I don't think I took it as anything more than shock. The second time I watched it, it was confusion and disappointment, maybe with not getting it. And somehow this clicked this time. It's just fun, and I'm gonna give it a 4 as well. And the story frustrates me, but I just love the music. And I've now really connected with the music in a way that I will probably return to it multiple times, and it's just so much fun. And I think it's just fun that there's that much enthusiasm for it. It's an institution now. So I'd like to see a stage performance at some point. Bryan, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
Let's do it.
Let's go to the Wild Wild West, the Wiki Wild West.
With giant iron spiders.
No giant iron spiders, but we have 3 good choices nonetheless. Option number 1, 310 to Yuma from 1957. Broke small-time rancher Dale Evans is hired by the Stagecoach Line to put big-time captured outlaw leader Ben Wade on the 310 to Yuma train. but Wade's gang tries to free him. Option 2, Young Guns from 1988. A group of young gunmen led by Billy the Kid becomes deputies to avenge the murder of rancher who became their benefactor. But when Billy takes their authority too far, they become the hunted. Option 3, Tombstone from 1993. A successful lawman's plans to retire anonymously in Tombstone, Arizona are disrupted by the kind of outlaws that he was famous for eliminating.
There isn't a choice here. Tombstone is one of my favorite movies of all time. Tombstone in big, bold, capital letters.
Well, we'll come back and do it again, then we'll do Tombstone. So, DJ, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
So you might not hear this on the final cast. I'll edit as much as I can, but Little Grant Man has probably made a lot of his cameos on this. So there's a lot of baby crying. So thank my wife Mary for doing baby duty tonight. He's a fussy little man tonight. But thank you all the listeners for listening. Remember, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, we invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. Those iTunes ratings really help us get the podcast distributed to other people. So it takes 30 seconds, and we really appreciate it. Give us a like on Facebook. Tell us what you thought of the movies each week. And follow us on Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com if you want to go into more detail or if you want to be on the show. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other. And watch more movies. Bryan?
Masquerade, paper faces on parade. Masquerade, hide your face so the world will never find you.